the most important piece of my journey to where I am now, is that self-reflection and finding out who I am and who I want to be before they put me in the ground.
You're listening to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. Hey everyone, welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career. This is conversation number 137, episode number 230. Thank you so much for being here, for giving me your time. It is my goal to deliver nothing but pure value to you. And my guest today is the epitome of value. He's a really interesting guy, a very genuine guy, and he really just wants to help other people. My guest today is a former Green Beret, Herbert Thompson. This is an incredible episode to see where he's come, how he's gotten there, and then what he's continuing to do now. So he had an interesting journey before he joined the military, during the military, and he's having massive impact after the military. So no matter where he is in his life, he's having impact and he's always yearning for growth. I think that's really important. We also talked about encouraging conversation within yourself and with other people, which is one of my favorite things to do, is why I have conversations. So I loved that we keyed down on that. Herb's really big on the way you're thinking. So not teaching people what to do, but why we're doing them. Herb wrote a book about transitioning out of the military, which is one of the reasons I really keyed into him and what he's doing. And then I've realized that he's doing a ton more than just writing awesome books. So we talk about those things in this episode. Remember, you can find this episode, all the other conversations to contemplations on kristoflewis.com/podcast or on any of your favorite podcast apps. And you can find me on Instagram at Kristof Lewis. One of the awesome ways to help the podcast out is to share it with a friend or check out all the other 229 episodes we got going on here. There's some incredible guests, some incredible content, a lot of things that I've learned in my life that I've turned around and shared with you. So without further ado, welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career.
It's a privilege to hop on here with you. This could be really cool.
Yeah, thanks so much. I've been looking forward to this for a real long time. And I'll tell you why, is because I just told you offline, and I'm going to tell them right here, is that I deal a lot and I talk a lot with people that are going through a military transition or going through a transition from one career to another. There's a lot of similarities, there's a lot of differences, but being former Navy, that's what I focus on. So it's cool to have you on here. And it's one of the things I want to talk to you about is the book that you've written about that and your experience with that. And before we get into any more, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to anybody that doesn't know.
Yeah, so I guess a day away from signing on leave, been retired out of the Army for a year now. Long story short, I joined at 17. I knew I wanted to join when I was a little kid, and I didn't have many options. So I joined at 17. I had worked, a couple odd farm jobs during the summer in a Burger King, and then said, hey, let's go in the Army. And met my goals in there. I became a drill sergeant and won drill sergeant of the year for the Army. And then kind of sat in my rocking chair thinking, hey, what if I'm 60 years old and what it could have, should have. So I said, I want to be Special Forces. That's always been my other goals during the Green Beret. So I went and did that. And then I spent the last half of my career as a Green Beret, retiring out of there. And then, why I brought up Burger King and working in a farm field is I didn't know where I was going to go after that. So yeah. I had to do some soul searching and find something, something else to do.
Yeah, which is crazy. It's interesting to me since I have a lot of these conversations and I look within myself that you said you didn't have a lot of options before you joined. I'm wondering right off the bat, why was that the case?
Yeah, well, I think part of it was just I was immature. There was no way I was going to school. No way. I grew up in a poor family. There was no way I was going to be able to pay for schooling.
Sure.
Or, quite frankly, I probably would not have made it a semester. I was a snot-nosed 17-year-old kid who thought he knew everything. And then, drill sergeant on day one showed me I didn't.
Yeah, but how cool is that? Because I went to college, but I dropped out. It wasn't for me. I hated it. I hated learning. And turns out I actually really like learning and having these kind of conversations. It's really funny how that turns around. It's even funnier that you said, as soon as you showed up, the drill sergeant just kind of showed you that was not the case. And then you ended up being drill sergeant of the year. So one of the things that I've been dying to ask you is, it's not easy to do something like that, and there's definitely a lot of special and really important characteristics that are involved with that. But what do you think is one of the more important lessons that led to your success as a drill sergeant?
Yeah, I think the first one, and I think it goes with leadership and being a drill sergeant, is caring.
Mm,
You really want to make a difference. You really want to. You got to love what you do. It's a lot of time. There's a lot of the weeks are 100-hour work weeks. You don't see your family. You don't see anything.
yeah,
You leave to sleep, and then some
yeah,
nights you're staying there all night. So you have to really have a passion for it and care about transforming America's sons and daughters. And like, it's probably the only everybody remembers their drill sergeant or basic training instructor, but if you're like, hey, who's your fifth grade science teacher, most people can't say that.
yeah.
There's not many positions that are so impactful on one's life. Maybe like a high school football coach, baseball coach, or something, but I mean, in a short period of time, a training instructor from any service probably makes the biggest impact on one's
Hmm.
life in the shortest amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a culture shock, like you were saying. I mean, I think I'm pretty safe to say that for most people that go through some kind of boot camp, it's pretty much just a culture shock. I was a guy that joined at 22 years old. I had been on my own for 4 years, whatever that means, like out of my
Yeah,
parents' house. And I showed up there and I thought, I'm not even joking when I say this. I thought I was living a dream. Like, I thought I made a really bad decision. I thought I made the worst decision ever in my life up until then. And honestly, I felt like that probably for the first year of my career. And it took a little while for me to snap out of that and stop having this negative output on what I volunteered to do. So
right.
it's cool to hear you mention those things, caring, love what you do. And I know that that's something that's really kind of rose to the surface for me is, this podcast. I really care about this podcast. I care about the people that I interview. I care about the people that listen to this podcast, and I through and through love what I do with this. So I know that's what I have that here, and I do believe firmly in what you said is you will see success eventually if you do those things and you feel those way about it and you're able to articulate that to the people that you're working with. So you obviously did that. You obviously were very successful with that. So it's incredible to see that. I don't think that's a very easy feat. And then to be able to get a beret after, you said 10 years that you were in, right?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, that's really cool, man. I love that. That's one of the questions I definitely wanted to ask. So it's something that's not easy is after 20 years of service is to get out. I think, like I said, I focus on transitions not only in the military, but I try to talk to people that are I want to encourage, like, hey, go do what you really want to do, and you don't have to be held down. But after 20 years working everywhere, anywhere, that's a long time. So I mean, you obviously made a book about it, and I really do want to talk more about it. But how was your mindset? Let's focus on that first. Like, how are you feeling before this transition? I mean, 20 years, it's coming. How does that
Yeah.
walk us through that?
Well, I know we don't know what we don't know, and I knew
Sure.
I did not know a lot. Uh,
What's a start?
so so I was like, well, I got to figure this out. And thankfully, somebody, actually a Vietnam era Green Beret who's gone on to be a successful businessman, we just happened to have a conversation 2 nights in a row, and he kind of that conversations. He wasn't even talking to me about transition, but he was,
Yeah.
and it kind of opened
Yeah.
my eyes. Wow, I need to start thinking of this. And then I was like, well, I know nothing about being a civilian. Because in a lot of ways, I say we're institutionalized, and a lot of people look at that negatively, but we're kind of sequestered. When you're in the military, you deal with military people. Even if you live off base, your neighbors are military people in a lot of cases, and that's the only thing you deal with. It's a whole different way of life, traveling all around the world. So, there's a whole lot I didn't know. So I just relied back on my military training and planning what I learned and said, well, if it works to, in this case, conduct unconventional warfare and do a campaign in another country, why the heck wouldn't it work to find a new career and get a new job? But it's much more than a job, because that's just one part of it. There's
Hmm.
the leaving the uniform behind, some identity there, all that goes into it. So, that started a whole lot of self reflection, which
Hmm.
I think was the most important piece of my journey to where I am now, is that self reflection and finding
Hmm.
out who I am and who I want to be before they put me in the ground.
Yeah. So there's a lot of important things going on there. I think one of the most important things is that you talk to somebody that had already done it, somebody that had done it and been successful at that. I think that's really important. I know for me, again, and I will say I'm sharing my own story as well, because now there's two people, me and my guest, that have both talked to somebody outside of the military that had already done it. And I had a guy, I was an electronics technician and I did a lot of IT work in the Navy too. And this guy had gone on to do IT work out of the Navy. It had been a successful transition, and I talked to him and he helped. So this is like, I want to highlight these themes, like, hey, listen up, like talk to somebody. I like talking about mentorship. So that helps, man.
Yeah, and I mean, I took it to next level. I mean, I ended up conducting, we say informational interviews like it's some fancy thing. It's two people talking, usually 2 people talking.
Mm-hmm.
And, it consumed my life because I wanted to figure this out, and I didn't want to become a statistic. So I ended up talking with over 2,000 people in the last, 2.5 years.
Wow.
And not all veterans, but it really helped inform my decisions of where I was going.
Wow.
Just getting that information and data helped steer me to what I wanted to do and where I'm headed.
So you were polling a lot of people in the positions that you want to work out or potentially want to work out, or can you explain more?
Yeah, so I give a perfect example of
Sure.
I grew up poor in a small town, so we had one bank and there was a couple tellers, and then there's somebody in the back office, and then I hear people say, "Hey, why don't you go into banking?" And I'm like, okay, they're not talking about the tellers, but are they talking about the guy or gal in the back office? Like, oh, there's this Wall Street. I didn't know what banking was. So I reached out and talked to people in banking, and very quickly, after a few conversations, figured out I didn't want to be in banking.
Yeah.
But I did that for all industries. So just talk to people.
Yeah.
Literally, what is your job? How have you been successful? And then finding out what they did for work. And I mean, I talked across all industries, and then I kind of started narrowing it down to what I wanted to do. By getting that information and seeing what
Wow.
other people are doing and what it's really like to be a consultant or in a tech company or a sales manager. You name the position.
Yeah, I probably didn't do enough of that myself, I'm be honest with you. I mean, I did like my first job that I had post military. I really enjoyed the people that I work with. I was lucky for that. I was lucky to have the position in a sense. I mean, I worked for it, but it wasn't right for me. And I left that job after about 15, 18 months or something like that. So I think that's a great point for anybody moving to another position. But what I like a lot about what you're doing and your book is that it goes into not necessarily like, this is how we're going to do it, like these are the steps to do it, but it's the way of thinking, as you've said. And I really, really enjoy that. I try to do that as well. I mean, I think that if somebody shows you exactly how to do it, it's not going to really work in the long run, and you got to really know like what is making that person tick to be able to do that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different. What you want in life is different. What I want in life, what our skills are, where we're headed. So I think that's actually the problem with the system is people try to make a checklist for it and say, do this
Yeah.
and you'll be fine. And no one knows you like you do. So
Yeah.
and that's hard to have those self talks in the mirror, if you will, and be like, hey,
It
what do
is
I
hard.
really want to do? What's going to make me happy? What's going to fulfill me? Oh, by the way, I got to put food on the table too. And that's going to be different for everyone.
Yeah, it's still hard. I mean, I've been out for a year and a half, I guess, coming up on 2 years, and I still have these questions. I mean, I think it's healthy to have the questions, to look in the mirror and ask yourself these questions continuously, or at some cadence.
I definitely agree. And a common theme is some people I talked to did not think of that, were not addressing it. And
Sure.
then years later, it bubbled up because, they hadn't been thinking about it. And all of a sudden, wow, after 10, 20 years out, they were like, what am I doing? I just been sitting here punching a clock at this company and
Yeah.
I've hated my life. Why am I doing this? So I think it helps, it's healthy.
It is healthy, and that's another thing that I like seeing. I spend a good time on Instagram. I do a lot of talking to people on Instagram and things like that. I think it's a good thing. I try to use the tool as for good things, like you were saying, positive. Like when positive people are trying to talk in a positive way, what could go wrong? And honestly, I see social media just as that as well. I try to leverage it that way. So one of the questions that I always love asking is something that sounds obvious when I ask it, but I always say that I ask it to promote the answer. And my question to you is, why do you help people? Why did you write a book to help people? Why are you having this conversation with me? Why do you spend so much of your time to do things like that?
Yeah, the simplest answer is I believe our country will be better off the more people who are successful.
Mm-hmm.
And we
Mm-hmm.
probably need that more than ever. So that's the short of it. But I look back on my life and being drill sergeant of the year, being wherever I was at, it was from mentors.
Yeah.
Either making me do something or pushing me, and they took time to make. I didn't get to where I am today by myself.
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes our country great is we all can lift each other up. And I know that sounds a little corny, but at the end
Hey
of the
man.
day,
Yeah.
it's true.
Yeah.
So I feel fulfillment. And that was part of finding out what I wanted to do. I literally enjoy seeing people successful. You could put me in the middle of any big time stadium, put 100,000 people in there and say, hey, give some training, give a presentation, go to the bathroom at the 50-yard line. I would be fine. You put me in front of two people and say, give me an award, and I'm freaking out. Because I love helping other people and seeing their success. And that it's kind of like on Christmas Day. I don't care about getting gifts. I want to see other
Yeah.
people unwrap their
Yeah.
gifts.
It's a special
So,
feeling. It's a really
yeah.
special feeling. And I do,
And,
I do agree that we need more of that.
and what I love about it's not a feeling you can buy.
Mm-mm.
It's not a feel, it's just you can only get that by from genuinely helping someone else.
Yeah, it is genuine. It absolutely is genuine. It's such a good feeling. You're right.
Yeah,
I just think about
with
it.
no expectation of return, because that's what
Yeah.
happens to me a lot. Is people are like, what can I do for you in return? Help the next person.
Yeah. I,
That's it, and just pay it forward.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this podcast right now, I kindly ask you to pay it forward and spark the conversation with somebody else to have this. Yeah, even like we were talking about, talking to the mirror, like talk to yourself and have that conversation, that tough conversation potentially with yourself. That's something that I think it's safe to say we both want to highlight. Get comfortable just talking about those things with yourself, and then talk with somebody
Definitely.
else about them is something good. So you talked about the shock that you had that was very similar to mine when you were going to boot camp initially, and how they made you realize a lot of things very quickly. So unless that's it, was there any other shift in mentality or behaviors that you experienced in your life from post or pre-military into, or even before, at any point in your life? Was there any kind of shift, or was it a slow crescendo into the mindset that you have now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we evolve over time.
Mm-hmm.
If I look back, let's be real. When I was 13, 12 years old, ninth grade, I went to summer school in high school, or
Yeah.
for English because I failed. And it wasn't because I don't know English, though. I don't have a doctorate in it. I know a little bit of the language. It was because I didn't care. I wasn't applying
Yeah.
myself. And around that time, a couple mentors, and one of them unfortunately has passed away, and then one of them was a science teacher. Was just they cared about me, and actually one of them was the in-school suspension monitor. Full disclosure, and was like, "What are you doing, man? You got promise." And he could see it in me as like as a teenager, you got promise, and that to me, I think started of like, okay,
Yeah.
started me on the track,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think just through time, it's evolved of like, okay, and I look at it now after the military, it's like that's not going to be the best part of my life. Like the book's not over,
Yeah.
the movie's not over, and now they're rolling credits. No, there's hopefully a lot more years left on this earth to make a difference. And at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, that's all we got. So let's do something. And that's kind of how it all started.
Yeah, man. That's why I love asking these questions. And sometimes, like, I ask, like, what do you help people? Or was there, like, it's because even though it sounds obvious, I think a lot of times we overlook what really happened. And what you described to me is yet another mentor in your life. So I see a common theme of people being able to step up into your life. And more importantly, for this person at a young age to see in you what you could not see in of yourself. So I think that coincides with what we're encouraging here is the conversation. So not only encouraging the conversation within yourself and other people, but looking in on other people's lives and seeing, being there for them when they might not be there for themselves, when like this person was for you. And it was a slow crescendo after that, but you may have not gone down that path. I don't know if that person had stepped in.
Yeah, no, definitely. There's, if, different times in my life, if people had not stepped in, I don't know where I'd be today.
Yeah.
Fortunately, people say luck, but if you work hard and opportunity, and then, oh, by the way, somebody just has to be looking out for you and slaps you in the back of the head figuratively and pushes you, one way,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of sets you on course.
Mm-hmm. I think so. And I love to see that you've had that common theme of mentorship in your life as well. And then I think that's a huge, from my point of view, a contributing factor to why you have helped so many people and continue to do that, write books about it. I mean, that's it's pretty plain as day for me to see that. And seeing another thing I wrote down real quick is like we talked about, seeing it in other people. So again, I want to highlight that. So you've obviously experienced a lot of things in your military career and just in life in general, pre-military, post-military. Again, I'm looking for something that might be Is there any been like a personal struggle, a personal obstacle, whether it be personal or whether it be professional, something like that, that was continuing to help define the path that you are, the journey that you are on in this life?
Yeah, I think this. I hope this answers the question. I said I came from nothing. Nobody in my
Yeah.
family had ever graduated college. Laborers to being on welfare to living in trailer parks to whatnot. And I thought that's not the life I want, and I'm going to change that. So that has really been a contributing factor to driving me to say, hey, for my kids, they're going to have it differently, and they're still going to be raised properly in my mind, but they're going to have different opportunities. You want it better for the next
Yeah.
generation.
Yeah.
So I need to work hard to do that. And we're given our name, and that reputation precedes you in most cases. So what are you going to make of it? And then what are you going to look in yourself in the mirror and be like, am I a good person? Am I doing good? Am I doing the right things? And that, I don't know if that answers the question, but
Mhm.
it was kind of the first thing that came to mind when you asked
No,
that.
I think, and if that's the way you feel as if to answer the question, then yes, that's absolutely, I think, the way to answer a question, because that's how you feel about it. And again, one of the things I pulled out of there is nobody went to college in your family, and you said like that. And I always want to highlight to people again. There's a lot of things that I try to pull out and highlight, of course, and one of them is that, like I said myself, I was a college dropout, and it's not a prerequisite for success. I'm not against
Yep.
college, but
No.
it certainly isn't
Yep.
a prerequisite. And that leads me into some of the other things I wanted to talk about, is just education in general, because education, whether you're going to college or whether you're a Green Beret in the military, you need to be educated. I mean, for Christ's sake, you have to be knowing exactly what the heck you're doing in your position like that. So how did you become, I feel as if in that position you have to become obsessed with learning in some capacity.
And that's what it is. You alluded to earlier of like you love learning, but maybe it wasn't sitting in a college classroom
Yes.
learning. So, no, you have to be. And a lot of people, especially drill sergeants, but even thinking Green Berets, people especially like, oh, you jump out of planes and shoot guns, and like, okay, yes, we do that, but
Yeah.
like, there's a whole that's a small minuscule part of it.
Hmm.
We're actually studying cultures,
Yeah.
we're studying people, because when you get in a situation, oh, by the way, they insert us and there's 10 of us, 12 of us, 5 of us, whatever it is, and hey, here's your guerrilla force you're going to partner with, and they all don't look like you, they all speak a different language, and they all may or may not like where you're from, and oh, by the way, they all have guns. So if I don't know the people, I don't know the culture, I don't know the history of I don't know their religion, how am I gonna survive essentially? So you have to always be thirsting for knowledge and on people, on policies, on the ways of the world, and yeah, it's just it's constantly just seeking more information to
Yeah.
because there's the strong way to get through life, but that's usually not the people who are successful. It's the people who get smarter and grow and personally and
Yeah.
learn.
So what are some of your favorite ways now in the present to be able to continue your education?
I think one, like the education, obviously, I'm doing an executive MBA at Cornell, awesome institution. Who would have thought growing up, kid fell out of high school and be going to an Ivy League
There you
MBA program. And I did a graduate certificate program up at Dartmouth at the Tuck School of Business. So who the heck would have thought that? But
go.
to me, like there's learning there, but this is learning. Conversations right here.
Hmm.
One is conversations, finding
I love that.
interesting, successful people. That is learning.
Yeah.
Two, reading, whether it's books. I mean, now with the advent of social media, news websites, there's so much you can learn if you just apply yourself and want to do it. So
Hmm.
that's kind of how I go about approaching it. Is I think the day, and I say this a lot, like the day I stop learning is, put me in the ground, because
Yeah.
there's you're learning something every day. And if you think you know it all, well, I mean, I hate to be the person to tell you that we don't. We're always, growing and evolving.
Yeah, I don't want to meet the person that thinks they know everything. I mean, I think we've probably all met somebody like that in our lives,
Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
not the person I want to hang out with. And I've
No.
been guilty of saying the same thing that you said as well. I truly do want to be learning until the day I die. I've even kind of made an episode out of it in the past about how I never want to retire, because alluding again
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
I don't ever want to stop working in the sense of learning and helping other people. And if this is the way I can do it, then I want to continuously do that. And I would very much agree that having these conversations, saying this out loud, it forces you to articulate yourself. Well, why do I feel this way? And
Yeah.
certain people ask certain questions a little bit differently and get you to think about things a little bit differently. And that definitely
Yeah,
helps.
that brings up something I like too. Is I don't necessarily, if you're a white guy with a beard named Herb and you're a Green Beret and a drill sergeant, I don't want to talk to you. I because I know that guy.
Yeah.
But like different people from different walks of life, different experiences. That to me is when it really internally starts being fun because like if somebody's like, "Well, I disagree with you," and I'm
Yeah.
like, "God dang, I'm pretty smart. What do you mean you disagree with me? Why?" And then you have that discussion. You start hearing what they say, and then you're like, "Oh, wow, maybe that is a good idea." And you start,
Yeah.
you start really pushing yourself to, think bigger
Yeah.
and really see the problem through. And that's why I love talking with people from all walks of life, just because I think that's how you develop more well-rounded and you
Yeah.
grow to be a better person.
It's really important. I wish I knew, and I'd like to encourage more of that, is knowing that it's okay to disagree with people and encouraging it like
Yeah.
that. I literally always think back to one person. John, if you're listening to this, you know it's you. And he and I don't see eye to eye on many major political things, but you know what? We don't bite each other's head off for those things. I mean, we're quite literally on the opposite end of the spectrum, but I'm like, seriously, man, why do you feel this way? And he doesn't have this emotional response of blah, 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 what you typically hear in the news. It's exactly like, these are the facts that I am seeing. Why do you feel the way you're feeling? So what you said is really important. And I do feel as if, I mean, if you think you know everything and you're continuously talking, like you said, to all the people that have done exactly what you've done, how can you expect to expand your knowledge? I don't think you can. Maybe in that one niche, but if you're truly trying to learn more about the world around you and more about people around you, then you're going to have to step out of that bubble.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it just made, I don't even know why this popped in my head. It made me think of like the Cold War with the Soviet Union. It was two powers sitting on opposite sides saying nuclear, mass assured destruction of like, and then what happened? People talked, and then, oh, by the way, the wall fell down, and,
Yeah.
that part of it was over. But that's what happens. If, two people are just sitting there and they can't talk, that there's nothing positive going to come out of two opposing sides just sitting there facing off. They have to talk,
Mm-hmm.
and we're all never going to agree. I've never met someone. I don't even agree with myself 100% of the time. So how am I going to find someone that I agree with 100% of the time? But I think that, and then to me, the big thing in my life is if you're around positive people, positive things happen,
Yeah.
and if you're around negative people, negative things seem to happen. So I try to find people that are different and that are positive.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about before we leave for the night, I wanted to talk about what you found, the SF2 biz, the
Yes.
501, and again, I'm huge on highlighting this kind of stuff, and I think it's really cool that you're just continuously creating things that help other people. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so we're still small, but I saw there was a need. There's a lot of people helping transition, but I truly believe not that we're better, but I believe Green Berets are unique in their skill sets coming out of the military.
Yeah, sure.
And most people don't understand it. They don't know what special forces is. They don't know what Green Berets are. And they think about jumping out of planes and shooting guns. So hey, I saw there was a need there, so let's do that. So essentially, right now, the early stage is still because it's a side gig for all of us that are
Mm-hmm.
involved. Connect people with mentors and opportunities. And we try to say, hey, we'll get you over the drop zone, hook you up with mentors, introduce you to opportunities, get you over the drop zone in the airplane and say jump, but we're not going to pack your parachute and we're not going to be on the ground at this point to catch you. So I think the more people we can help, and a buddy of mine I helped through it, and he said, if you stop right now, your work's been worth it. So to
Yeah.
me, it's like I want to help more, but like is one person more important than the other? No. So just, as long as we keep helping one person at a time or small
Yeah.
numbers, then it's valuable, but it's how can we scale that up to help even more?
No,
And
you're right.
I'm looking to help more than just Green Berets also. That's kind of my next venture going forward and that's why I talk to all kinds of people, all walks of life, all services, in transition, actually people that aren't even, veterans at all. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just getting people to get to where they need to be.
Well, that's the common theme in this podcast, at least with you and everything you're doing, is getting people there, not catching the fish for them, teaching them how to fish kind of thing, your book, everything we've talked about. So to me, it makes sense why your business would be having that model as well. And I think it's really smart to be able to do that. It encourages people to do the work on their end as well, because they know that somebody else is not going to be there to catch them. So they have to get out there and get to work.
Yeah, they have to have buy-in. It's kind of who appreciates something more,
Mm-hmm.
somebody that buys something or somebody that earns it. And I know people tell me, "Hey, what's it like to be a Green Beret?" I don't know. Go to the store, go online, buy one for $20, and you can. It wasn't that moment. It was the moment I earned it that made it special.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we get out of here for the night, I would love for people to be able to find your book, find this business. How can they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so the transition mission, it's on Amazon, getting great reviews, or SF to biz, SF the number two biz.com is our website, and then feel free to reach out. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so go ahead and feel free to reach out to me there, and always willing to have a chat.
Awesome. Well, you guys will be able to find all of that and more in the show notes. As always, I encourage you to reach out because this conversation's been really fun. I've really enjoyed it, digging into the why for a lot of these things. It's always interesting for me. Like I said, again, a lot of these questions may sound obvious, but I really do want to know. There's a reason why I ask them on here. So there's a lot of good takeaways from here. And I would encourage you guys to go out there and have the conversation, reach out to people like Herb and other people like that. So, all right, Herb, thank you so much for being here and have a great rest of your night, man. That was really fun. Appreciate it.
No, this is awesome, man. I really appreciate having me on.
All right, see you.